It occurs to me that I haven't actually ever talked about video games on this channel, but today I decided that I wanted to talk about a character from a video game. However, before we actually talk about the subject of this video, I should probably talk about video game villains. There are two main types of video game villains. The first is the type of villain that you encounter, and then get some piece of armor or lore telling you that this was actually the general of the Holy Army who killed a dragon with a tube sock and solved homelessness before being corrupted by NFTs. In other words, they are seen for one mission, and the majority of their backstory is delivered by text pop-ups when you loot their toothbrush off their corpse. The second type of video game villain is the one that is built up and interacted with over the course of a game or even multiple games. Think Virgil from Devil May Cry or Odin from God of War. Here's the thing. Being an interesting character is usually reserved for the latter group. Villains that you interact with quite a bit. Sure, reading about the AI version of a being tearing off the face of its flesh counterpart to avoid going crazy is really cool, but it's not really compelling. Okay, Mr. Reviewer, let me ask you an obviously leading gotcha question. Does that mean that to make a good video game villain, it has to be built up over the entire game? Well, my strangely meta friend, the answer to that question is no. No, it does not. So let's talk about the character this video is about, Rhulk, the disciple of the Witness. Please give him a warm
welcome, children of light. Drown in the deep or rise from it.
Thank you for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it, Mr. Rhulk. Let's talk about this character in sort of a reverse order, because I'm going to summarize what I love about him first, then talk about his character second. I'm going to talk about why Rhulk can work so well despite not having any built-up lore or story before appearing. The only real thing there was an ongoing mystery as to why specific enemies were where they were in-game. I'm not going to go into specifics. Just know that the foundation for an ancient evil was set up for a time. But what makes so when Rhulk actually appears, there is a little bit of precedent, but he's still mainly a character you meet once in a video game and then never meet again. But what really makes Rhulk, I think, really interesting is visual storytelling. Actually, before visual storytelling, let's talk about Rhulk's voice. Rhulk's voice gives a great insight into his personality. The way he talks and even the tone of his voice show just how insignificant he finds your character. Well, some of the dialogue is simply because he's an alien monster. Another part of it, I think, is clearly audio flair, as he's trying to talk just to impress you. But I also think there is some tiredness in his voice. As you progress through the mission, he takes your character on a tour of his ship. He acts as a curator for his great ship filled with all sorts of grisly experiments and grisly trophies. He enjoys taunting and testing. As you travel through the ship, he tells you about the curios gathered within. Then you see it. The upended. In no uncertain terms, Rhulk tells you what will happen. He will use this monolithic weapon to destroy the world upon which he himself is trapped, and that one that you are currently on.
The upended will live out its namesake. This world will be sealed from the light, leaving your kind to suffer. You are not fit to serve the deserving. You will not rise from the deep, but drown in it.
This is brilliant because it shows Rhulk's entire devotion to his cause, but I also think it goes back to maybe there's some part of Rhulk that is tired of this life. Rhulk continues to speak to you as you travel through the ship. He speaks in esoterica. Yes, that is a word. Finally, we see Rhulk when we finally reach the precipice of the Upended, where your battle is to take place. Rhulk is nonchalant in your character's siege. He will even yawn mid-battle and taunt you about being tired. However, when you defeat him, he makes one final plea of forgiveness to his god, the Witness. He remains a zealot to the end. And that is most people will ever really know about Rhulk, is what they experience in the Vow of the Disciple raid. But this is only a small sliver of his story. See, Destiny 2 also has collectible lore that you get through doing various objectives. So now I'm going to tell you the story of Rhulk. But Mr. Reviewer, you usually just speak in vague terms about the characters' backgrounds, so why go into Rhulk's background? Well, voice that I hear when I shut my eyes, there are a few reasons for this. First, I feel like doing something different. Second, my videos are made with the assumption that the viewer is familiar with the material covered, but this material, you have to go out, look for it in-game and read it, or look it up online. And yeah, this lore is also written, but I would recommend actually going and reading it. This lore is written in a very interesting way, as it is Rhulk reliving his past while speaking with the Witness. The final reason I want to tell you about this is if I had to rub my two neurons together to do some proper research, I'll be damned if I don't use it in a video. Luckily, I am merciful, and I've decided to make my own images for Rhulk's backstory, so you aren't stuck viewing the same 5 images of Rhulk on a loop. To start, Rhulk was born on the planet of Lubre. Lubre was once a desolate planet with 2 suns. But wait, how does that work? Shut up, no one cares about the impossible orbit of a planet with 2 suns. One day, the Traveler visited Lubre. You can think of the Traveler as a sentient space magic battery that hates triangles. I'm not getting into it. The Traveler gifted the Lubraians with its power, which they used to power up one of their suns, which turned blue as a result. How does any of that work? Well, my dear viewer, space magic. Half the planet used this power to build a great civilization, forming a regime creatively called the Regime. Lubre was then split in 2, dividing the regime from the Wanderers, or those who were outside of the regime's reach and had to struggle constantly to survive. Why did the regime split the world in half to keep the Wanderers apart? I don't know. Probably like space classism. Rhulk was born a wanderer, where every day was a struggle to stay alive. The struggle was only compounded by roving bands of regime thugs called stalkers, who would kill wanderers for no apparent reason. One day, the stalkers raided Rhulk's camp. His father was carried off, but Rhulk killed a stalker and took his weapon. This is the turning point for Rhulk. Rhulk saves his people, yet they are not happy for his actions. Rather, they react with horror upon seeing Rhulk's actions. Rhulk saved them, yet they spurn him and see him as a monster. I break now from Rhulk's backstory to the moment after Rhulk relives this. Rhulk is shown a vision of himself killing the clan pet. After killing the pet, Rhulk feels powerful, probably for the first time in his life. Once again, his clan regards him with horror. Upon reliving this, Rhulk states that he is a monster, to which the Witness replies that he is not a monster, but a savior. For a whole year, Rhulk wandered the barren wastes of Lubre, hunting stalkers so that he can return his father to his clan that he was exiled from. Then one day, he meets his father, who had tried so hard to find and save. Now, a stalker for the regime. This is the second inflection point of Rhulk's story, as he is betrayed by his father, who has joined the ranks of the regime. Rhulk is dragged in front of the regime to be tried for treason. But his father, who apparently has risen through the ranks rapidly, begs for his son to be spared. And because the Lubraean court system is apparently built with popsicle sticks and uncooked macaroni noodle, Rhulk is allowed to live, but only if he joins the Stalkers, which makes no sense. That's not how anything works. You wouldn't say to a murderer, you can live, but only if you join the police. Anyway, Rhulk swallows his pride and joins the Stalkers, but only because he yearns to be able to get revenge on his traitorous father. He renames the glaive that he had taken from the Stalker those years ago, which he had once called Rhulk's Ward in honor of his father, now calling it Rhulk's Bane. But then, Rhulk is betrayed again. After serving the regime alongside his father, he catches his father betraying the regime in order to smuggle his family into the city. Rhulk is broken and numb, and when he falls from the bridge into the chasm that separates the city of the regime from the wastes that the wanderers have to travel, all Rhulk sees in his family's eyes is relief. But Rhulk doesn't die. In the darkness of the abyss, he found an artifact known as the Witness's Luster. Okay, now the lore doesn't specify what the luster is, but based on its name and the fact that it is owned by the Witness, I think it's safe to assume that this refers to the Witness's foundation. So, reborn with the power of the Witness's luster, presumably just meaning Rhulk put on some makeup, Rhulk climbs out of the pit. At this point, Rhulk pleads with the Witness to not show him what comes next. The Witness forces him to relive it, though. Rhulk slaughters his entire family, but he still only sees relief on their faces. Horrified by his actions, the regime strips Rhulk of his glaive and the luster of the Witness. The regime imprisons him, planning to execute him, but Rhulk is freed by the power of the luster, and in one final act of defiance against a people who abandoned him at every step, Rhulk takes his glaive, bestowing it with its final name, Lubrae's Ruin, and inverts the energy of the blue sun. The sun cracks in half as its own energy shears it in half. How does any of this happen? You listen here. The Destiny universe is one where a sentient moon is chased by a flock of goth Doritos led by a vape pen that wished to be a real boy. So when I say that Rhulk inverted the sun, just be happy that it actually destroyed the planet of Lubrae. As the visions end, Rhulk emerges from some obsidian monument, reborn through the Witness's power, following Rhulk's float in the darkness after Lubrae's destruction. After reliving the past, the Witness asks him how he feels, and Rhulk replies with relief. Rhulk is a tragic character that became the perfect tool for an evil god. He was betrayed and abandoned by everyone. The Witness offered him purpose and an explanation. Rhulk, of course, took it. Thank you for listening. Videos are going to be a little bit more spaced out because I have school again. I'm planning on making a video about some video games coming up. Just some things I really enjoy from them. Not villain deep dives, just sort of videos, because I kind of just want to do that, and I think it's important that you do something you enjoy. So thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.